It's interesting that you use the term unlearn, and I kind of have this psychological aversion to the term unlearn, right? Because I'll never unlearn how to cuss somebody out. I'm gonna walk right outside the door and do it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to put your healing on pause and then come back.
See what I'm saying? I subscribe to the concept of replacement behavior. So this is what we have to do in terms of like unlearn, because I'm still going to know how to do it if the right button gets pushed or whatever have you. But we have to choose replacement behavior, and that's kind of where we find, we examine these patterns of unhealthy behavior, unhealthy cognition, et cetera, and then we replace those things, right? Because relationships succeed or fail based on needs being met. So once we find out that a particular pattern doesn't produce what's healthy for us, then we have to figure out how to replace it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Know Your Rights Camp podcast. I'm Mariela.
I'm Sean.
And we are super excited to have Mr. Etoya R. White with us today. And we have a bio. I'm reading this bio. So, Mr. Etoya R. White, you are a licensed professional counselor and a relationship coach.
Yep.
You founded Etoya R. White Therapy and Coaching. You also provide consulting services on mental health, trauma, team building through your LLC, and you are a doctoral candidate in servant leadership.
Correct.
Okay, ABD.
You know,
I'm right with you, brother.
I'm working towards I got some coursework left, but I'm on the way.
I'm done with the coursework.
We'll get you there.
Still got some coursework.
Yes.
I feel you. We there.
Yeah.
Because I know you are committed to urbanizing mental health, fostering emotional growth through tailored therapy, coaching, and community engagement.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here today
man.
for being our health speaker at the camp.
Man, listen, because we need to talk about both that mental and that physical.
about
So
it.
I appreciate you, my good sir.
Absolutely. I'm grateful, man. I appreciate y'all having me here.
No, of course, man. So it's an honor to have you as somebody who also has an MFT background and so both in ABD. So trust me, I definitely understand your journey.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you for the work you do in this community. So my first question to you is, your personal journey to self-actualization has been incredible, inspiring. How did you overcome the emotional and systemic barriers in your hometown of St. Louis, shape your decision to focus on mental wellness for Black and brown men and boys?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So I live my whole life as a thank you, right? To God, my whole life as a thank you, because I was actually hit by a car when I was 8, bad accident, and probably, just kind of the way the accident happened, probably should have been killed. But I survived it, broken ankles, some other things. And so I took on this journey, and this is my thank you. I'm on gratitude. I'm on a gratitude journey. So everything I do and the passion with which I serve just comes from gratitude, because, that was March 4th, 1984. I couldn't be here. So my life is just a thank you every single day. I was a comedian. I'm from the west side of St. Louis, and I was actually what's called a DSEG kid. We call it a DSEG kid, so we have voluntary desegregation of schools here in the St. Louis area. And so that was me. My mom made a decision that we wouldn't go to neighborhood schools. We would get bussed out to suburban schools, which are predominantly white. And that was a major part of my journey and what developed the passion that I have right now, because it was kind of a sign now. Hindsight, looking back at it, it's like, why wasn't my neighborhood going to school in my neighborhood good enough? Why weren't the schools in my neighborhood considered good enough? And then in comparison to what I experienced in my predominantly white school, and my district was one of the largest ones in the state at that time, but it was maybe about 13% Black. And so going out there, the long bus rides, I was gone 14 hours a day. Wow. Just for education. It's like, man, is that like doing some cost benefit analysis for me to be able to get to where I am now? Like, why wasn't I able to do this walking down the street or taking a 20-minute ride instead of an hour-long ride to school? And so my journey being out there in an environment that was predominantly white, obviously there's not going to be as many Black teachers, there's not going to be as many Black administrators. That also means
no cultural sensitivity.
No doubt about it. And so the environment, unfortunately, it wasn't prepared to receive us. It was prepared to receive the money that came with us, but it wasn't prepared to receive us in terms of our needs from a social emotional standpoint. So we had to figure a lot of stuff out on our own, and I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my journey coming from, a background where it was just my mom. My mom had 3 kids, and we kind of did some non-traditional things. We, lived with my grandma quite a bit growing up, and so having to figure out Black maleness in an environment that's predominantly white, especially because I was spending the majority of my time in that space, was a challenge because they didn't have, Black counselors in the schools to work with us and so on. So,
and then at home, it was just mom and grandma.
Yeah. So my, it was mom, my grandma, and then my brother and my sister. My dad was nearby. My parents were never married. So that was an additional dynamic that was, kind of complex. And we talk about these complex issues. So he was present, didn't necessarily have a presence. And so that also impacted my journey. So it's like, not only am I having to leave the crib, but when I come back, I don't necessarily have the connection to the wisdom source that I'm supposed to have. And so, that left me as a young boy having to figure out a lot of stuff about my journey. But it was that, and looking back on that is what shaped what I want to do now, because I wanted to be a voice for kids who didn't have representation. So I was out there as a kid floating around in the gray area. And so I got, I followed this path because I wanted to be about, empowerment, because we didn't have anybody in those schools speaking for us. And so that's my journey, is to give sound to voices.
I love that. And you mentioned the wisdom and the empowerment. Can you talk about how important that is for oneself first? I think a lot of times when we hear empowerment, we always think of doing it through a nonprofit or through school or through someone else. But you are really an advocate for the importance of the relationship with yourself, first. Can you talk a little bit about how specifically our communities can learn and also unlearn those ways where we're not centering or we're not looking inward first?
Yeah. So, and it's interesting that you use the term unlearn, and I kind of have this psychological aversion to the term unlearn, right? Because I'll never unlearn how to cuss somebody out. I'm gonna walk right outside this door and do it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to put your healing on pause and then come back.
See what I'm saying? I subscribe to the concept of replacement behavior. So this is what we have to do in terms of unlearn, because I'm still going to know how to do it if the right button gets pushed or whatever have you. But we have to choose replacement behavior. And that's kind of where we find, we examine these patterns of unhealthy behavior, unhealthy cognition, et cetera. And then we replace those things, right? Because relationships succeed or fail based on needs being met. So once we find out that a particular pattern doesn't produce what's healthy for us, then we have to figure out how to replace it.
And also having the discipline to replace it.
No doubt about it.
Right, because and a huge part of that, as people ruminate. And when you get stuck in that ruminate, you get stuck in that loop, and you make excuses for it. And also, you find comfort in that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You got to figure out, is there some juncture, the question is this: do you have will problems or do you have skill problems?
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying?
Come on.
I think we found your thesis right here.
We found it
oh,
right
wait
here,
a minute.
Hold
Write
on.
that down. We got a thesis project going on,
Yeah. It's will problems or skill problems. And sometimes
that's a bar.
People are where they are because they don't have the skill to do something different. And that's where the work, that's where these conversations and the action steps, that's where it comes in, is now teaching replacement behavior, because a lot of times people just need new skill, because all you have in different situations is, in many cases, what you inherited from your mom and your daddy, or what you inherited from the environment that you grew up in, no doubt about it. And you get to a certain point in life where you reach an impasse and that information is no longer helpful, and you got to replace it with something that's going to allow you to move forward.
Well, in this, it's great that you said that, because this next question, right? You're talking about replacement, right? You have a vast amount of skills, right? You have a background of a Division I football player, corporate sales professional, and now pursuing your doctoral degree, right? In servant leadership. How do these diverse experiences inform your approach to both mental health and personal growth with your clients?
Very much like the previous question, right?
Right.
It's an exploration of my whole self. So I bring facets or aspects of all that, and I'll say also being a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, because there are aspects of that and football that contributed to my growth as a young man, especially in a space where I didn't necessarily have healthy males to connect to. That was a part of the journey. So while I got through, I've been abroad for almost 30 years now, and then the camaraderie of college football and practice and all those different kinds of things. Like, all of that matter. That's my fingerprint, right? And that's what I brought that into parenting. I took that into marital relationships and, professionally or whatever have you. So when I when you say my name or read the bio and all these different things, all of those things are just, that's the that's kind of the cherry on top for where that actually comes from. The nucleus is that what you're talking about, is that combination of experiences that make me passionate about what I do.
I see you, my D9 brother.
Yeah.
I see you, big dog.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So keeping in line with social emotional learning. Right now, the youth kind of get poked fun at because it's like, oh, the youth are anxious. All of them have anxiety. All of them have this. All of them have that. And so it's interesting to hear how different generations view mental health problems or physical problems, et cetera. And so I'm wondering, what would you say are specific skills that are critical for our youth to develop now?
Well, the first thing is identification, right? We're talking about identification and awareness. And I'm big on definition of terms. So whenever I'm speaking or training, I'm always defining terms, because what I share with young people is your goal should be to not be disqualified from any conversation that's happening around you. And if you don't understand vocabulary, if you don't understand what's being said, then people will have no problem disqualifying you from conversations, right? So that's the thing. Like, so what is it that they have access to with regard to school curriculum or social emotional, just whatever, therapy, food deserts, whatever have you? What is it that they have access to, so then we can, work on those deficits or whatnot? And also, too, being careful about pathologizing each other and pathologizing oneself by,
that's self-diagnosis.
Yeah, that's diagnosis.
That's a real thing, right? Because what controls your mind controls your life. And so if people are looping you into these things that, they think about you because of behavior patterns, you have to be very careful about assigning yourself responsibility for problems that you didn't create.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's powerful. Because especially now you hear so many buzzwords with them, and it's like, wait, don't say that. I know it might be in a song. That don't mean you got it.
Narcissist.
That part.
Narcissist, he's got this. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, people, and it's unfortunate because that word is getting thrown around so much, and it's like y'all really haven't encountered someone who's truly a narcissist or someone who is schizophrenic. Like, don't take that stuff too far.
Yeah. That's fine, but it's important, man. The vocabulary, because you're sad doesn't mean you're depressed.
Yes.
Just talk about that. Yeah, you're
Their
right.
emotions. Yes.
Yeah. That's
You
important.
come in and out of them.
Identification, increasing emotional intelligence by way of increasing emotional vocabulary. That's what needs, because you talk about the hashtags and what they're continually exposed to or whatnot, and all of that stuff is working against them in ways that they don't even realize.
And you mentioned they don't even realize it. I think they don't realize that what they consume is also education.
No doubt about it.
It's like what they're learning on TikTok,
100%.
what they're looking on social media. That's what you're feeding your brain. So in essence, I'm a huge advocate for education, but I think self-education is even more important. And so a lot of times the youth are getting self-education through a phone, where some people get self-education through a book.
Correct.
And so those gaps are there, and it's everything that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So, question for you, sir. So, through the Etoya White brand, your LLC, good sir, you provide consultant services to various organizations, right?
Yep.
So, can you talk about some of the most impactful training and policy changes you've seen in schools or companies related to mental wellness and emotional regulation? Sure.
So, just the aspect, the emphasis on mental health in general, right? Because having been I provide staff training. I've worked with a bunch of, Amazon, MasterCard, a bunch of different school districts and corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And just the idea that mental and emotional wellness is a thing. Let's just say that, just period, that it's actually a thing. Yeah, because we're having policy change now that's moving away from that, so that it's not as much a thing. But just to be in the space to understand that people get it now and understand that productivity is impacted by mental, emotional, physical health. All of these things, like what you experience outside in your day-to-day life heavily impacts what you do on the job. And so I've been impressed with the emphasis, especially in education. Like, I've been in front of hundreds of teachers and administrators and training district level staff on what's necessary, because if they can't lead if they're not healthy. And so that's where,
true.
Working with corporate professionals, you're going to have a limited bandwidth if you're not well. Right, and it's okay to not be. And so let's have conversations in this space about what effective leadership is. And if you're not talking about what's impacting your physical health, your emotional health, social connectedness, spiritual health, financial health, then you're not going to be as effective as you possibly can in whatever role you have in this particular organization.
And I see that a lot in educators and people in like corporate America. We hear all the time, like, oh, my head hurts. And it's like, how many glasses of water have you drank today?
Yeah.
Or someone will say, all I had is coffee. Oh, I had this crazy project due, so I only had 3 hours of sleep. So sometimes, most of the time, as a society, we over-glamorize the overworking, being tired. And if we want to keep doing the good work, we have to be able to sustain ourselves.
Right.
And so what do you think our communities get wrong when it comes to thinking about our physical tied to our mental? And it's like, if you don't attend to both of them,
Right.
eventually your body will make that decision for you.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And that's I don't know if it's so much of what we've gotten wrong because this part of it hasn't been handed to us, right? Historically, when we talk about mental health, we talk about medical health, and obviously there's a history of trauma that's connected to those particular systems that essentially have been weaponized against us. So I don't know if that's what we've been given, but what we have to do is understand that it doesn't work, right? And we have to make some changes.
It hasn't been working.
No,
Facts.
it hasn't been working.
Facts. And we have to, was it Arthur Ashe? Maybe you got to start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And that's with, hey, what minor changes can I make? And you talked about water, like working in education. That's coffee culture. Yes. You know what I mean? So it's like, and what you talked about with regard to, working extra and all those things. And we have conversations about how those things are often tools of avoidance.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
and
true.
you said your body's going to have limited bandwidth because if you don't respond to what your body's communicating to you, it's going to impose its own will at some point.
Absolutely.
Now we've got high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease, and all these different kinds of things.
And liver problems.
But the problem is that we don't control the narrative, still don't, in the places where we need it, and that starts with school, because the entry point for a lot of these conversations is school. The entry point for mental health, activity, all these different kinds of things, a lot of that happens in school.
Yes.
Right? And so because that often has negative connotation attached to it, or that process is weaponized in and of itself, then that's what we have. So it's kind of a continuation of perpetuation.
Some of our kids, they're eating lunch at like 11 o'clock. Or even earlier.
So imagine, right? And I see it every single day. Like if lunch is at 10:30 and you eating Takis, Twinkies, and Foodtopia, and that's all like you have or whatever have you. So now we're talking about access to healthy food, and if it's not at school, then what can they bring to school? Are they eating breakfast? Every child, every young person I work with, I ask them those questions. What'd you have for breakfast? How'd you sleep? Was your sleep, bro? And this is just routine conversation, because if you're not eating breakfast, you're not going to be able to function well at school.
Yeah.
Right.
Do it in corporate spaces as well. You can't lead people if you're not well.
Nope.
We talk about this all the time because as educators, we buy breakfast, our own breakfast, like out of our own pockets. Like we're talking bananas, oranges,
apples,
to give it to the kids,
everything.
because we know they're coming in through those doors and have not eaten breakfast.
No doubt about it. And I tell them all the time, like behaviorally, and this is kind of, again, this is the circular part of it that's tricky, because the same things that happen naturally because your body is deprived are the same behaviors that are going to get categorized as behavioral disruption or whatever have you. And now you're getting diagnosed with something that's totally inappropriate, and now you got a medication management plan when you just need to eat. You just need to eat breakfast. You don't need these meds. You need to eat breakfast. You need to put the phone down and not be watching TikTok and YouTube until 1 a.m.
7 hours at a time.
And then getting up at 5 or 6 and thinking you're going to come to school or go to work and be able to function. It's the same concept.
Man. So, something that I was thinking about as we're talking, and also just thinking about what to ask you. I see that we have challenges when it comes to both body empowerment and social justice today, right? And even talking about how you do that in your work, right? You talk about those two things. But let's talk specifically for the Black and brown community, right? So for those living in Black and brown communities with limited access to nutritious food, right? Because we just had that conversation of what they're getting at lunch. Due to food deserts, like what are some tangible and everyday strategies they can adopt to improve their health despite of the systemic barriers of having access to healthy foods?
Yeah, and that goes back to that, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. You feel me? Because, you might not necessarily have a bottle of Avion, but turn the faucet on, boil it if you have to. There's any number of things that you can do, but we got to be willing to engage in that level of mindset shifting where when we go to Aldi, because if you doing real cost benefit analysis, the amount of money that you spend on the honey buns and all these other different kinds of things, if you shift and just take baby steps, right? If you just the apple, because a lot of things that are healthier for us with curve, but we got to have a conversation about urges and cravings, which is how we get to the sugar and all these other different kinds of the additives, all those different kinds of things. And so it's take a walk. If you live in an environment or a neighborhood where you can just walk around the block, start there.
Stand in the sun, touch grass.
Man, get the vitamin D, be outside. Or a lot of kids today, and we talk about this all the time, we drive around the hood, we in the block like that. Where the kids at? You know, like be outside and play. Encourage your kids to play. Take the tablets and the phones and exercise some discipline, some structure. Or you yourself as an adult. Limit yourself. Set one of those timers or alarm on your phone and let you know you've been doing this for too long. Go outside and take a break or chunk it. Do it a little bit at a time. Just go take a walk. Go sit out on the porch and get some fresh air or whatever have. If you got some stairs in your house, walk up and down the steps while you drinking the water or whatever and you'll just be amazed. And we can have a conversation about food discipline, and that's what I talk about in the men's group that I operate monthly, because you just be amazed between food discipline and sexual discipline, how you can reshape your mind to think in a way that will have you doing those very things. Hey, you know what? I can walk. I do it myself now. I can walk past the ice cream section where I would normally it's on sale. Blueberry's on sale. Let me go and get that. I can walk by it and not think twice about it because I'm operating with some food discipline.
Love that.
That's beautiful.
So today you gave a presentation to 570 youth from St. Louis.
Yeah.
What do you want them to remember?
That they can. You know what I mean?
That's powerful, brother.
Like, period. That they can. Doesn't matter what circumstances. I can tell, about my background or people all around them. I talked about a quote that I heard, and it was from Gino Auriemma, who's the head coach of UConn women's basketball. And he talked about an artist, an individual, an artist being the person who recognizes or knows the blemishes in his work. Right. And so that for young people is understanding your blemishes are what create or what other people see as blemishes. As an artist of your own life is what gives you value. It's those unique things about yourself that we want you to channel. There's power in those things. There's creativity in those things. There's definition in those things. And if you stop comparing yourself to what you see on social media,
that's comparisons
the biggest thing,
joy.
Embrace the uniqueness.
Embrace
the uniqueness,
Come
right?
on, man.
And that's it. Just recognize that there's value in that, because if there's 10,000 copies of an artist's work, the one that has the blemish is the one that's going to have the greatest value.
That's great value.
Yes.
That's true. Man, thank you so much, brother, for doing this podcast for us, man. That was powerful.
You. Mr. Etoya R. White, soon to be
Etoya.
doctor.
Hey,
looking forward to seeing that thesis.
Speak those things that be not as though they were. I receive it.
Man, appreciate you,
Thank you so
brother.
much
Thank
for
you
joining
so
us
much.
today.
I'm grateful. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you, man. So we appreciate you again, my good people. If you want to follow us on all of our social handles, please follow us at Your Rights Camp.
And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get notifications of all our podcasts. And if you ever want more information, please visit us, knowyourrightscamp.org.
We'll catch you next time.